Okay, so here's another example of solving a system of equations, but this one's a little bit different. So now remember, the first step here is to solve one of the equations for one of the variables. And the hint that I usually give you is to solve for one of the variables that has a coefficient of 1. But you notice that none of these have a coefficient of 1 here. Okay? So, and furthermore, if I go to solve this equation for x, I'd have to divide by 5. 5 doesn't go into 3, it doesn't go into 18. If I solve this first equation for y, I'd have to divide by 3. 3 doesn't go into 5, it does go into 18 though. If I solve the second equation for x, I'd have to divide by 4, and 4 doesn't go into 6. Or if I solve the second equation for y, then I'd have to divide by 6, and 6 doesn't go into 4. So I'd have to deal with fractions either way, and it's possible to do the problem and work through the fractions. Just typically we try to avoid it if possible. Okay. So what I can do though, what I can notice is here I've got the 5 and the 4 I can't do much with actually, but the 6 and the 3, I can notice that really 3 goes into 6. Okay. So think about this for a second. I don't have to really solve for y. I could solve for 3y, and then notice that 6y is really twice as big as 3y. Okay? I'll show you what I mean now in a second. So what I'm going to do is, since negative 6y, which is what this term here is, can be written as negative 2 times 3y, what I'll do is I'll take this first equation and solve it for 3y instead of y. And we'll see how much easier it comes out to be. Okay, so I'm going to solve the first equation for 3y. So of course the first equation is 5x minus 3y equals 18. So if I'm solving for 3y, I need to get rid of the 5x term. So this is a positive 5x, so to get rid of that I'd have to subtract it. So subtract 5x from this side and subtract 5x from the other side, because of what you do to one side of the equation you must always do to the other side to keep everything balanced. 5x minus 5x cancels off here, leaves me with negative 3y equals 18 minus 5x. This is almost what we want, but remember we wanted to solve for a positive 3y. So what I usually recommend is to deal with positives if possible. So get rid of this negative sign. To do that, remember the last example, all I'd have to do is divide by negative 1. So divide everything here by negative 1. This is going to give me a positive 3y. This is going to give me a negative 18. Okay? And this is going to give me a positive 5x. So that leaves me with 3y equals negative 18 plus 5x. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is take this and substitute it into the other equation. Of course, the other equation is 4x minus 6y equals 18. I'm going to rewrite that 6y as negative 2 times 3y, and now I can take this expression for 3y and plug it in here for 3y. Okay, so everything else is going to be the same. This is just going to be this stuff here instead of the 3y. So that is then going to look like that. You can see the substitution happening right there. Now I've got one equation with only x's in it, so I can solve this for x. Okay, so to solve this for x, all I'd have to do is apply my distributive property again. Negative 2 times negative 18, which is 36, positive. And negative 2 times positive 5x gives me a negative 10x. Okay, now I can group my x terms together. 4x minus 10x is negative 6x. So I've got negative 6x plus 36 equals 18. And then I'll have to get rid of the 36. So subtract 36, subtract 36. Okay, to the next page. So subtract 36 on both sides, which leaves us with that. Now to solve for x, I would have to get rid of the negative 6 by dividing both sides by negative 6, which of course then is going to give me a positive 3. Now I know what one of the variables is. I can go ahead and solve for the other one. Well, remember, we can go back to this 3y term that we had before. We can take x equals 3 and plug it in here for x. So that's going to give us negative 18 plus 5 times 3. Of course, 5 times 3 here is 15. Negative 18 plus 15 gives us negative 3. Now, remember, this is not solved for y here. This is solved for 3y. So to find out what y is, I actually need to divide both sides of the equation by 3. Okay? So divide this by 3, divide that by 3. Okay? And then you'll notice this gives me y, and negative 3 divided by 3 gives me a negative 1. So my answers are actually x is 3, and y is negative 1. Okay?